This is a so-called jobs package. And yet, I defy you to tell me where a job is coming from here. Decreases the corporate tax rate from 8.84% to 8.34% on the first $50,000 of a corporation's taxable income. That calculates out to $250. That'll buy you coffee for a month. It's not going to create any jobs. Reduces the annual minimum franchise tax on all corporations from $800 to $750. Come on, get serious. That's a jobs package? And it goes on and on. The tax credit is for those who don't itemize. So that's certainly not the small businesses that file under the Social Security number that are not LLCs. It's renters, because if you have a home, you're itemizing a deduction. Where did our recession start? Started in the housing market, so it doesn't even hit to our construction industry. It's been called revenue neutral, but we don't have any independent analysis to say that. A previous speaker talked about how components of this have been heard in the revenue and taxation. As vice chair, that's true. But this is a comprehensive package that has pluses and minuses. It takes from one segment of the business community, it gives to other people or businesses, but we don't have this as a package analyzed to see if it is indeed revenue neutral, but we're told it is. It's interesting that when you think of the big picture, I will tell you, I think mandatory single sales factor is probably a better policy than elective, but I wasn't at the table when that was the consensus decision made a couple of years ago as a part of the palliative relief for very deadly tax increases on an economy in a recession. You'll recall those days. That's when a lot of our members lost their jobs as elected officials because Republicans went up on tax increases that either the voters went after them or others did, and they're not around here anymore. But the trade-off was single sales factory. That was a consensus of the business community at that time. And what does this legislature do immediately after that? Try to change the deal. And you went from an elective single sales factor, which we have now, to what is before us, this single sales factor, which I described earlier in the day as garbage wrapped up with fruit and trying to pass it off as something good. So what is the proper way to do this? One of my other colleagues talked about a dialogue in March with the governor on how we could do a comprehensive tax package. That's how it should be done, not in the dead of night on the last day of session. But once again, we did it before that way. We're trying to do it again that way. That's why we get in trouble. That's why we end up trying to unwind the problems that we created before. We have time, folks. Let's fix this right. You can do it by either elective for 5 years, 7 years, name a time, but give businesses the opportunity to have something certain. They're not as wound up about high taxes, they don't like it, but they're more wound up about the uncertainty that we legislators create in the business environment so they can't recapture their costs. When we change the goalposts, all we do is make it a loss for them rather than something they can predict and they can pass on to the consumers. So let's stop doing that to them. Maybe it's a phase-in over 4 years or whatever the time frame is, but let's sit down together, let's work it out. We're willing to do it. Let's not just swallow this poison and say that we have somehow fixed it in a revenue neutral, which has no independent verification. Let's do this right. I urge a no vote.